Imagine this. You're talking to someone, maybe a friend you've known for years, maybe someone you just started getting close to, maybe even a romantic partner. The conversations are good, the connection feels real, and then one day, nothing. No fight, no warning, no goodbye. They just vanish, like smoke, and you're left standing there holding your phone, rereading old messages, wondering what on earth you did wrong. Now, here's what most people assume in that moment. They assume it's about them, that they said something wrong, came on too strong, weren't interesting enough, weren't enough full stop. And honestly, that assumption makes sense from where you're standing, because when someone disappears without a word, your brain, loyal, dramatic little thing that it is, rushes to fill the silence with explanations. And the explanations it reaches for first are always the worst ones. But what if I told you that most of the time, when someone disappears without explanation, it has almost nothing to do with you? What if the disappearing act is actually a deeply psychological response, one rooted in fear, attachment wounds, self-protection, and sometimes a kind of emotional paralysis that the person doing it can barely explain to themselves, let alone you? That's what we're unpacking today. Not to excuse it, not to romanticize it, but to actually understand what's happening inside the mind of someone who ghosts, vanishes, or fades out. Because understanding it changes everything. Let's start with what psychologists call conflict avoidance, and let me paint you a picture. Think about the last time you had to deliver bad news. Maybe you had to cancel plans, or tell someone you didn't want to pursue a relationship, or admit you'd made a mistake. Remember that uncomfortable knot in your stomach, the way your brain started running calculations? How do I say this without hurting them, without them hating me, without this becoming a whole thing? Now, imagine someone whose nervous system experiences that feeling at 10 times the intensity every single time. For highly conflict-avoidant people, the idea of having a direct conversation, even a kind, reasonable one, can feel genuinely overwhelming, not just uncomfortable, overwhelming. Their nervous system reads it as a threat, and the most primal response to a threat is to escape it. So they do. They disappear. Not because they don't care, but paradoxically, sometimes because they care too much and don't know how to handle it. This connects directly to attachment theory, which was developed by British psychologist John Bowlby and later expanded by researchers like Mary Ainsworth. The short version, the way we were loved or inconsistently loved as children creates an internal blueprint for how we relate to people as adults. People with what's called an avoidant attachment style learned early on that closeness comes with pain. Maybe their emotional needs were dismissed, or a parent was physically present but emotionally unavailable. So their developing brain made an adaptive decision. Don't need people too much. Keep a wall up. Stay safe by staying slightly separate. And when relationships start to feel too close, too real, too vulnerable, that old survival code kicks in. The wall goes back up, and sometimes the wall comes up so fast, so completely, that they disappear before they've even consciously decided to. Here's something that might actually blow your mind. Research in neuroscience shows that for people with avoidant patterns, emotional closeness can activate the same brain regions as physical threat. Dr. Stan Tatkin, a couples therapist and neuroscience researcher, has written extensively about how insecurely attached individuals literally experience intimacy as danger at a neurological level. Their amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires up. Their body wants to run. And ghosting, fading, disappearing, it's a form of running. It's not rational, it's neurological. Now, I want to be clear about something here. None of this means disappearing without explanation is okay. It's not. It leaves real damage, real confusion, real grief, and real self-doubt in the people left behind. What we're doing is distinguishing between understanding and excusing. You can understand why someone does something and still know that it wasn't fair to you. Both of those things can be true at the same time. But let's go deeper, because there's another layer here that doesn't get talked about enough, and it has to do with shame. There's a particular type of disappearance that happens when someone has done something they feel genuinely ashamed of, let someone down, pulled away after getting too close, maybe led someone on without meaning to. And rather than face that shame directly, they avoid the person who reflects it back to them. Psychologist Brené Brown has spent decades studying shame, and one of her core findings is that shame thrives in silence and secrecy. It makes people hide. And sometimes the person who disappeared from your life isn't running from you, they're running from their own reflection in your eyes. This also shows up in what therapists call emotional dysregulation, when someone simply doesn't have the internal tools to process a complicated emotional situation. They feel overwhelmed, flooded, unable to find the words, and so instead of speaking, they go silent. Silence becomes the only language they have for something they can't articulate. It's a coping mechanism, a maladaptive one, certainly, but a coping mechanism nonetheless. Think of it like a circuit breaker tripping when the emotional load gets too heavy. The power just cuts out. And then there are the people, and this is a smaller but real group, who disappear not from fear or shame, but from a kind of emotional compartmentalization so refined, so habitual, that they've genuinely convinced themselves that quietly fading is kinder than confrontation. They've told themselves a story where disappearing is actually the merciful option, where saying nothing spares you from pain. It's a logical error, of course, but it's a very human one. We are extraordinarily good at constructing narratives that protect our own self-image. So what does all of this mean for you, the person who was left without an explanation? Here's the reframe I want to offer you. The absence of an explanation is not evidence of your unworthiness. It is evidence of someone else's unresolved emotional landscape. Their silence is not a verdict about your value. It is a window into their capacity, or their current lack of it. And those are very different things.
If you've ever disappeared on someone, and more people have done this than will admit it, this might be your moment to sit with that. Not to punish yourself, but to ask honestly, what were you running from? What felt too big to say out loud? Because the growth doesn't live in the ghosting. It lives in the moment you choose, next time, to say something true instead of disappearing. Even if it's hard. Even if it's just, I don't know what to say, but I don't want to just vanish on you. That sentence alone would change someone's entire experience. We live in a culture that has gotten increasingly comfortable with the quiet exit. Algorithms make it easy to mute, unfollow, and move on without ever having to look someone in the eye. And while that friction-free disconnection might feel easier in the moment, we are losing something important every time we choose disappearance over honesty. We're losing the chance to grow, to be known, to offer someone else the dignity of a real goodbye. The people who disappear without explanation are not monsters. Most of them are people who are scared, people who are overwhelmed, people whose emotional education left them without the tools for this particular kind of courage. And that's worth understanding, not because it takes away your hurt, but because it releases you from the lie that you were the reason they left. You weren't the reason. You were the mirror, and they weren't ready to look. If this landed for you in some way, if it gave you language for something you've been carrying, or helped you see a situation differently, drop it in the comments. Tell me, have you ever been disappeared on? Or if you're feeling brave, have you ever been the one to disappear? There's no judgment here, only curiosity. And if you want more of this kind of deep dive into the strange, beautiful, complicated psychology of being human, you know where the subscribe button is. See you in the next one.